Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking all about patterns. What do I mean by that? I have this saying when it comes to patterns that if it's showing up again, this is a good thing. And patterns are happening all the time in your life. Often you won't actually notice them until you are stuck in one. We can have good patterns that work for us. We can have patterns that really don't work for us. And it's the ones that are no longer working are the ones that you're going to notice that you're really stuck in. Because the thing is that patterns are part of our human experience, right? And the ego within us creates patterns to feel safer, because when we work in patterns, when we do things repetitively, when we do things in cycles, this creates actually a sense of safety. And so for the ego, it actually is not just safer, but also easier to create these patterns, these repetitions in behavior or thoughts or emotions or how you show up. You will do this because there will be a sense of familiarity in them, and that creates safety, or it will just be easier for you and you can go in a sense on autopilot. And so patterns are good in a way until they no longer work for us. And that's what we're going to be exploring in today's episode. I'm going to provide you with some tips and some tools around patterns, things that I use in helping when I teach about patterns in the programs that I offer. I'm also going to provide things that I have discovered in the work that I've done in the Akashic Records, because not only are we humans recreating these patterns, but it's not the first time you will experience this, and your soul will have experienced these patterns in other soul experiences in parallel lives. And so this is also information I've learned a lot through the work that I do in the Akashic Records. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what I've learned, tips and tools, as well as I'm going to provide some channeled guidance from the Akashic Records to help you with the pattern that you are currently stuck in. If you're not stuck in a pattern, then receive the channeled message and how it can help you in any way possible. So, and I wrote down some notes because, I have done a lot of work within myself when it comes to working through my own patterns. A lot of patterns that I have recreated throughout my life because they have felt safer, because they felt more familiar, because they've created, in a sense, a false sense of safety for me. And I have had to do a lot of work in releasing the pattern. And, what I like to say is, and this is something that I've really realized in the work that I've done in the records, is that when it comes to patterns, we're never actually going backwards. We're always going deeper. And why do I say this? Because when you notice a pattern showing up, and often you won't be able to shift out of it right away if it's a deeper pattern, if it's one that's shown up throughout your life and often many other soul experiences. When you notice it showing up, it will take you a little bit to shift out of it. But the important thing to understand is, even if you continue to make decisions that go with that pattern, you're never going backwards per se. Like, let's say you learn enough about it and you start to make decisions and you start to shift out of that pattern. Maybe it's a pattern that shows up in relationships, or it's like around eating habits, or similar emotions that show up that you don't always want to be feeling or sitting in or getting stuck in. You may feel like you're going backwards if it shows up again, but the truth is that you're actually going deeper, because each time that pattern shows up, you have more awareness around it and you have more tools to support yourself in it. So you're never actually going backwards. And if it's showing up again, this is always your sign that there's more for you to understand. There's more for you to learn. There's more for you to potentially heal through. And there's greater expansion that's being asked of you. Right? So whenever a pattern shows up for me again, and I'll give an example here. So in my healing journey, my role as a mom was the first thing that really set me into my deeper healing. So I was noticing so many triggers that would show up for me. It was really hard. And I would get really, really dysregulated. and I would feel out of control. And that was really the beginning of my healing journey. It was so uncomfortable, and I was suffering so much with my mental health and anxiety and postpartum depression and all of that. I was suffering so much that I was truly forced to have to figure out what to do, because I just couldn't take it anymore. And as I began to heal and dig into much deeper pieces, the stuck emotional energy that was within me from past experiences in this life, as well as other soul experiences that all connected, they're all cycles, I began to do deep inner healing. I began to do somatic work. I began to build more deeper regulation within my body. I began to learn about my nervous system and find ways to regulate more. However, I still would continue to get quite dysregulated in moments. It just would spread out more. It wouldn't be like every day. Maybe it would then be like a few times a week. And then it would spread out to like once a week. And then maybe those big dysregulated experiences would come like once every couple weeks, and then once a month. And now I can say that, often it's like maybe every 3 to 6 months that I'll have like kind of a quite dysregulating day, but it is nowhere near what it used to be years ago. And so this is to say, in the beginning when that would occur, I would be like, oh, another day, and I'd feel so bad, and I'd feel kind of shameful about it. But I began to learn that if it was showing up again, there was more for me to learn. So bringing compassion to my experience, bringing understanding to myself, compassion also that like we're human and we're not going to get it perfectly. And so I would dig into it again, dig into what I needed to understand better. What could I have done differently? Right? And it's not that it doesn't show up anymore, but now it's much more spaced out. And that's what we will notice about our patterns. Often our deepest patterns will still show up. It's part of who we are. It's part of our kind of human makeup, right? Part of our conditioning, the experiences that we've had, and also connected to our soul patterns. If you want to know more about soul patterns, message me or go to the link in my bio. Soul patterns are something that we can discover for you in your Akashic Records. When you go into your Akashic Records, you can learn about all these different patterns your soul chooses to re-experience in parallel lives in order to cycle out of them, in order to continue to expand into your highest expression. But what you're experiencing in this life will be a pattern, a soul pattern that also shows up in other lives, in other experiences. And so if you want to know more about that, that's work that we do in the Akashic Records soul readings that I provide. But back to this piece around, you're always going deeper, you're never going backwards, even if it continues to show up. So for me, if it shows up again, if I have these really dysregulating days to do with motherhood or the kids, I have now adopted this mindset of like, okay, what do I need to go deeper with here? What do I need to see? What am I not seeing? What do I need to understand on a deeper level that I wasn't before? What is there more to learn? Right? And when you can adopt that learning mindset, it can really help you in some of those experiences. And the other piece to understand is if it is showing up again and you're willing to dig in to figure out what is there, understand that every time you choose to continue to dig in and do that work of building awareness around it, connecting within yourself on a deeper level to see what's being shown to you, to see the purpose that the pattern holds, to see where it comes from, get to the root. Every time you do that work, you slowly release out of it. Because every time you go in and work with the energy of that pattern on a deeper level within yourself, you are getting unstuck from it. You are releasing emotional energy. Right? And the reason why pattern shows up, it's connected to our energy. It's connected to our behaviors, our thoughts, our emotions. All of that is energy. And so when you go within yourself, tap in on a deeper level to figure out where is this coming from? Why is it showing up again? What purpose does it serve? And you connect within yourself and you start to work with that energy, you naturally begin to release out of it and get unstuck from it more and more and more each time. So this is another reason why I say we're always going deeper. We're never going backwards. Sure, we might need to go mentally backwards to these past experiences in this life. But again, that's using the linear mind. I mean, time is not really a thing in a linear sense, but you might say to yourself, well, I have to go backwards into childhood or into those past experiences, but you're going deeper into them, right? And you're kind of getting in there and you're releasing more of that like stuck sediment that's within you. Okay? Now, here is one of the most important things I will tell you when it comes to working with your patterns. You change your patterns through 3 ways. And this is something that I teach in the programs that I provide. 1, in my Power and Purpose Activated program, helping you tap into your deeper purpose and embody your truth. 2, in my Journey to Your Records program, which teaches you how to connect within your Akashic Records and become a confident Akashic Records reader for yourself and others. Link in bio for the info on all of that. Here's what I teach. And this is something that I found through working through my old patterns as well as what's shown to me in the Akashic Records. 1, you need to have awareness of that pattern in order to begin to shift it. And you can have a lot of awareness around it. You can have a small amount, but you will continue to build awareness the more that you work with it. So you need to have awareness. Without awareness, you can't see what's going on. You can't make change, right? I think of awareness as, thinking about being on the ground and seeing something all around you, like doing a 360 spin all around you and seeing what's on the ground, versus you get into an airplane and you go above into the sky and imagine how much more you can see. That is awareness. Awareness allows you to elevate to a higher place to see more. And so you can't shift a pattern if you don't have the awareness of it. And so that's also like connected to releasing some guilt or shame around why you couldn't have done better before with something. Well, if you didn't have the awareness around it, you couldn't have done better. And this was something I really had to work with motherhood and my journey as a mom. There would be some days where I would beat myself up and say, oh, I wish I could have done better, or I wish I had done differently in the past. And I began to get to a place of, but I couldn't have because I didn't have the awareness. We can't change, we can't grow, we can't expand, we can't evolve unless we first have awareness of what that piece is. So awareness first when it comes to patterns, being able to see it. Secondly, connection. You need to be able to go within yourself and understand the pattern on a deeper level, right? Where does it come from? Why is it showing up? What purpose does it serve? How is it meant to help you expand? How is it keeping you safe, right? Your ego is continuing to recreate that pattern out of familiarity. So you want to understand why. And this is where we also want to have some compassion for self, right? Because even if it's a pattern that we hate, maybe it's to do with drinking or eating habits or, dating the wrong type of people or getting into really bad situations, compassion. Because even if you don't want to be making those decisions and recreating that pattern, you are, because on a deeper level, a part of you is finding safety in it. Whether you saw it growing up, whether you lived it for years as a child, the conditioning that might be around that pattern, right? So this is where you want to have a lot of self-compassion. And when you're doing that second piece of connecting, this is where you bring in some parts work. You work with the parts that are recreating that pattern out of safety. And if parts work is something that you need help with, this is beautiful work that I do in my somatic healing sessions. Parts work absolutely changed the game for me and my healing. I cannot talk enough about how life-changing it can be when you can learn how to work with these parts within yourself that are in resistance or keeping you stuck or recreating patterns or experiencing these emotions. When you can begin to work with these parts, that's where you begin to create such deeper freedom within yourself. So if you need help with that piece, link in bio for somatic healing sessions. So we've got awareness, connection, and then my favorite part, choose a different decision. The way that we truly shift out of patterns is we choose something new. Whether it's a new decision around something, whether it's a new emotion you choose to feel, whether it's a new habit you choose to create, choosing something different and often the opposite of what that would have been is how you shift out of that pattern. And so a good example here, if we're going with the one that I was giving around motherhood, I began to see on my healing journey, especially as I began doing somatic work, working with my nervous system, getting within myself, working with the parts, I began to see that there was a part of me that thrived off of chaos, that thrived or learned how to, I shouldn't say thrive, learned how to survive in chaos, learned how to survive in dysregulation. That's actually where I began to feel my most powerful and in control, because growing up, I had a lot of experiences that were quite dysregulating, that felt quite chaotic. And so this part of me that would show up, that would take control, that would get into my power, but it was a dysregulated energy. And so I began to see that part of shifting out of it was choosing calm, was choosing slowness. That was really hard for my nervous system because it had functioned a certain way for so long. So notice how there has to be some self-compassion in seeing these parts that show up, in seeing these patterns that have functioned for so long within us. Self-compassion. And then it was about beginning to learn how to choose differently. Even though every part of me was like, oh no, we want chaos, we want fast, we want quick, we want dysregulation, because that's what we've always been used to. And so it was about learning how to make new decisions around that, setting myself up for success in calm and steady and slowness, which felt very opposite to begin with. So those three pieces are super important when it comes to shifting out of your patterns, okay? I cannot stress enough having compassion for yourself when it comes to this stuff. Our patterns really do serve a purpose until they don't anymore. And the parts of you that created these patterns, it worked, right? And so we want to have, and in some cases, it probably helped you survive in some ways, right? And so we want to have a lot of compassion when we're working with shifting patterns within ourselves, a lot of compassion, a lot of patience, and trust in the process. If you are watching this and you're getting to this point, you're doing the work. If you are starting to see your patterns, you're building the awareness. And then it is about beginning to really connect within yourself and get to the root and figure out what's going on there, and then start to make new decisions. And the new decisions, I will tell you this right now, you can't just skip to that piece. You have to do the inner stuff to unclog and get unstuck the energy that is recreating that pattern. To simply say to yourself, I'm just going to choose this other decision, it might work temporarily, but if it is a true pattern and it's part of your makeup, it will start to show up again. And this is why often, fad diets don't work, is because on a deeper level, there are patterns showing up there, emotional patterns. And when we get to the root, and we understand ourselves on a deeper level, and we figure out where they started and what the purpose has been and how they're there to keep you safe, and we start to shift that and release some of that energy, that's where you can begin to make new decisions that feel more grounded and more safe. So let me know if you need help with this. This is beautiful work that I do with clients within somatic healing sessions. I cannot say enough how life-changing somatic work can be on your journey, especially if you're on a journey and you're looking for that inner healing, you're looking to get unstuck with things, you're wanting to feel more inner freedom within yourself, create change. Somatic work is where it's at. And if you're really wanting to just understand where some of your patterns come from, this is where an Akashic Records soul reading can be really helpful to help you cognitively start to understand some of those pieces. Okay, enough of the teaching. I think you got the point. I'm going to tap in now and just see what wants to come through from the records in terms of some channeled guidance on this piece. If you want to be moving in the direction of where you want to go, you have to be willing to work with the pieces within yourself to get unclogged when you get stuck. They're very much giving this analogy of any kind of vehicle, car. They're actually showing me a carriage to begin with. And they're showing the wheels on the carriage. And if the carriage can't move, you look at the wheels and you understand, okay, what's going on within the carriage that might not be allowing it to move? Why might it be clogged, right? And looking at those wheels, what could be stuck in there? And if you were to look at the wheels, maybe there's some mud in there, maybe there's some gunk in there. And so naturally, you would begin to work with the wheels. You'd begin to clean them out in order to get the carriage moving again to where you want to go. The same is the case with your patterns. You cannot just expect yourself to move and go fast if you are clogged. Your patterns, if you feel stuck in something, it is because you are stuck in a pattern and there is emotional or energetic clogging going on within your system. And so you want to go within yourself. You want to see what's going on within yourself. Why might you be stuck? What are the pieces that are getting in the way from you moving forward? Curiosity, compassion, love, acceptance. These are the pieces that you want to bring within yourself as you begin to get curious and become the detective of your own inner experience.